And let's go. G'day guys, welcome once again to another episode of the Tripod with Alex and Jacob. This is the round 2 recap. Another slight winning week, going 7-6 on best bets. And who knows, this might be the last NRL weekend that we watch in a little while. We'll have to see what happens. The AFL has suspended their season starting from today for 2 months. So we'll have to see how the NRL goes. But it's going to be absolutely grim if we don't have any NRL. Jacob, a good winning week, and we had a winning week last week, so if we finish on that, it's decent, I guess, but we would like to see the NRL keep going just for our sakes, but I guess we'll see what happens, right?
Yeah, and honestly, predicting how many more games there's going to be is harder than predicting the games themselves. I mean, I'd probably set the over-under at round 3.5 when this stops. I really think maybe,
you're probably right.
I don't know, we're 50-50 to get footy next weekend. We don't know.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you guys come here to listen to us talk about the round of footy. In terms of a winning week, I'm not that happy really because it was a minor winning week, 7-6, and every time we win, we're risking $11 to win 10. So look, I'd say that's mediocre, but that's punting. At the end of the day, even if you are break even or making a little bit and you're getting more enjoyment out of the games and we're steering you away from some losers, and there's been, some public sides have gone down the last 2 weeks, that's something we can build on. And I hope, as you said, we get games to build on it.
Yeah, definitely. Let's just talk about the game that we just saw, Jake, because that's what we're here to do. It was the Eels absolutely demolishing the Titans 46 points to 6. We did have one best bet on the Titans in the first half, and they just couldn't cover the 5.5 line. Look, in terms of the Eels, we mentioned at the start of the season that they were, I think, your pick to win the minor premiership, Jacob. And honestly, they looked really good in this one, but the Titans were just absolutely woeful. Bryce Cartwright did some absolutely terrible things, and honestly, I've said this many years in a row, but I do think that he is a liability, and I do think that Bryce Cartwright is not a first grade player. Terrible passes, terrible defense, escorting penalties, just terrible stuff all the way around. The only thing that I was going to say is the Titans' defense for about 55 minutes was decent. There was something encouraging there, but then they just let in a few late tries. I'll tell you what about the Eels, though. We said at the start of the season we were very high on the Eels. A lot of people were low on them after watching the very first game of the NRL. They only score 8 points, they only score 1 try. Everyone said, this Eels team's pretty garbage. But let me tell you, they are completely legit. And I'll tell you, Mitchell Moses is good, but Dylan Brown was the better half today. 2 tries, and he was all over the place. And this Eels team, it's a good win to build off from here.
So I guess if there is no more footy, then our Eels minor premiership bet would cash. They got to be top after they put on like 40 in the second half.
Yeah, they would have to be.
Our bad, because we took Titans plus 5.5 first half. They were down by 8. We were on the right track,
close,
that if they were going to cover, it was going to be at least they'd have to start and be in the ball game. And they lost Proctor in the warm-up. They had multiple players get injured in the first half, had to reshuffle the back line. As you said, Cartwright was out at centre, and they don't have other people to pick ahead of him. Shannon Boyd is out of this side, AJ Brimson, and we should never have gone against the team that we think is better than the public realise, and a team we think can win the comp in the Eels. And you've seen their class shine through in the end. The Titans were under a mountain of pressure, defending. I've never seen so many repeat sets in my life, and then when they finally got the ball, they dropped it on their own try line. So they were just begging to be torn a new one, and they were.
Yeah, indeed they were, and we should mention that Reid Marnie, who I was pretty high on last year and this year, injured for this game, didn't come back on, so we'll have to see what happens with that injury. Let's backtrack to Thursday night, Jacob. It was the Cowboys beating the Bulldogs 24 points to 16. We did not have a best bet on this one. We had a $200 bet between ourselves, which I won, and luckily I'm back to even for this week, but fairly impressive victory by the Cowboys, I thought anyway. I did think that they were the better team. I thought that Scott Drinkwater, I had many question marks about him last season, but look, he has grown a lot in that role, and I really like the way that he was playing. I like that he's hitting the line and actually, running at the line, and it's good signs for the Cowboys. In terms of Valentine Holmes, I said this last week, I really do think he's going to add a lot to this Cowboys attack. I said last year this Cowboys team was decent. They have a decent forward pack, but their problem was executing an attack. And I think that Valentine Holmes adds that spark that they didn't have last year. I know that he's going to take a while to sort of grow into that role. I know he's still, learning the stuff, and he's made a few mistakes, especially last week. But I think he's going to be a great addition to that Cowboys team, especially in attack. that Bulldogs team, geez, I've said this. I know they scored 16 points this game and they scored 2 points last week, but I've said this numerous years in a row that they just lack that spark in attack. And without a really dominant halves pairing, which the Bulldogs do not have, I really struggle to see where the points are going to come from this year. And that's another reason why we sort of gave out the Bulldogs to finish wooden spoons this year. But I think the Cowboys definitely deserve the win there.
Yeah, and I think it was ironic that I made fun of you for kind of saying repeatedly on the pod that you hate the Bulldogs, and the style of play that they play is they grind you out, they make you work so hard, they play no frills, they play tough defense, and then what they serve up on Thursday night, I mean, letting in an untouched try off a scrum, error after error after error. As you say, they got no kind of superstar in the halves or, playmaker. I mean, I love Watene Zelezniak, but yes, they're saying that maybe when Kieran Foran comes back into the team, but I know he had like a good month last year, but I don't know if he's the answer.
No, I
but
agree.
When they're going to play like that, I mean, I still don't even know what to make of the Cowboys. You're praising them. What I said about the Cowboys was not that the attack needs to improve, but that the forward pack needs to stop relying on Taumalolo. Well, you can rely on him when he's going to have 350 running meters. So he was an absolute force of nature. I thought it was 345.
No, they recalculated. It was like 316 or 318 or something.
Oh, that's lame. But he had, nearly 200 at half time. So, I mean, he alone did demolish the Doggies. And as you say, with the number of errors they make and without the skill that they have in key positions, that was a bridge too far for them.
And I'll tell you what, Jacob, you said that some of those guys would have to turn back the clock. I'll tell you who turned back the clock, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought Cohen Hess was really impressive in this one.
He shouldn't be turning back the clock. He's like 10 years younger than you and I. He should continue to improve.
Well, yes, but you mentioned that that Cowboys forward pack, the only good person was Taumalolo, and I thought Cohen Hess had a really good game. Next up, it was a very exciting game, this one. The Panthers beating the Dragons 32-28. If you are a Dragons fan, Jesus Christ, that is a very, very brutal loss for you. Letting the Panthers score 2 tries in the span of 3.5 minutes is pretty diabolical. But that is what this Panthers team can do to you. But even so, I know that I think, Jacob, we both had the Panthers to finish in the top 8 this season. But super inconsistent just throughout the game. And I get that they started well, they're up 12-0, and you just look like they're going to run away with it. And then they let in, 3 straight tries in a row to the Dragons, and they were down at half-time. And that is the Panthers that we've kind of become accustomed to in the last couple of years. Pretty bad defense by both teams, it seemed. In terms of the Panthers, I mean, you kind of saw what happened there. It's the same as what's happened both years, that they can turn it on at times and they can be absolutely terrible at times. But in terms of the Dragons, I thought that Ben Hunt, I mentioned last week, I said that Corey Norman and Ben Hunt were very, very average. I thought that Corey Norman was actually better this week. I thought that Ben Hunt was still pretty bad. So I still think that this Dragons team, I haven't upgraded them at all for this game, and probably not the Panthers either. But this Dragons team, if they can't get the halves sorted, and I don't think they will throughout the season, I still do believe they're a bottom 4 team.
And I feel really bad for them because we picked them to be bottom 4 before the season, and they have not been too bad. They could have easily won the last 2 weeks, and they've come agonisingly close in round 1, blowing chances to win it, and then in round 2, blowing the lead. And as you say, the Panthers, they were down 12-0 in round 1. They had to come back against the Roosters, and they did. And then in this game, they ran out to 12-0, and it was looking like it was about to be 18-0. They made a line break. In fact, that's right where the game flipped. Matt Duffy literally takes an intercept on a breakaway on like a 2-on-1, flips it, and it's 6 points the other direction. So next thing you know, that led to a wave of Dragons tries. And obviously, Duffy back in the team added an extra attacking dimension, definitely an improvement from playing Lomax at the 1.
Yeah, Lomax
but then
was
the Dragons, and I couldn't criticize Hunt and Norman too much. I know Hunt always cops it, but I think people notice his mistakes more than other players.
Probably
but
true.
They built an 8 or a 10-point lead with 15 minutes to go. They should have held on, but once again, it's long-range tries by the Panthers, and they do have explosive outside backs, and it's this Crichton who, again scores a long-range winning try 2nd week in a row. So the Panthers, they obviously need to improve their consistency, and the Dragons, I just don't know where they can go from here.
Yeah, and you wouldn't think that they were they're going to go too far from here. Let's get on to the Broncos beating the Rabbitohs 22-18. We did like the Rabbits in this game and got a bit unlucky. We went 1-3 on best bets and lost, I think all 3 best bets by less than 2 points. I thought that it was a pretty close game, probably could have gone either way, but to be honest with you, I did think the Broncos deserved to win. I thought the funny thing was, it's like, this Broncos team, obviously we know that, the forward pack is one of the most electric, young, talented forward packs in the comp, and any team would be happy to have that forward pack, but I thought that the Rabbits, honestly, matched them in the forwards. And the difference was the outside backs for the Broncos. They actually made plays when they needed to. The Rabbitohs didn't. And look, Wayne Bennett's come out this week and said, look, maybe the Latrell to fullback experiment is over. And it might be right, to be honest with you. Because look, when they put Alex Johnson is a fine fullback. I know he's not the most talented fullback, but he's solid, he catches balls, and he knows what he's doing back there. And Latrell was the best centre, arguably, in the comp last year. He does not look comfortable at fullback. So, look, all I'm saying is that, maybe they need to do a reshuffle there, the Rabbitohs. They do have a lot of talent there. I thought that the forwards matched the Broncos. But, look, the Broncos' outside backs were, better than the Rabbitohs' outside backs. And at the end of the day, the difference was Katoni Staggs. He was an absolute monster in this one. So, unlucky for the Rabbitohs, but another very good win by the Broncos.
And I would say that this game is a perfect example of where the bookies get it wrong, because they open the week with the Bunnies as an underdog. And I know what you said, like the Broncos, the narrative is this forward pack is unstoppable, but it's like you lost Matt Lodge in the preseason. Tavita Pangai Jr. suspended. Offengowi's not back from injury yet. Yep. You didn't bring in any big recruits in the offseason. You lost Gillette. Your captain, Alex Glenn's not playing. The forward pack average age is like 21. None of them, I think, beyond their second season. Like, they didn't have a forward pack that had any right to dominate on Friday night. And in fact, as you say, that's not where they won it. And then Brody Croft goes off injured early.
Yep.
And the Rabbitohs have Adam Reynolds, who's been, a quality halfback in the league for years. Cody Walker, rep level player. Latrell Mitchell, big money, addition.
Oh, yeah.
Damien Cook, the Australian hooker. So how do they not completely dominate the game, or let alone we had them as an underdog? We just need them to win it. But I hate to just boil the game down to what
we had them as underdogs. They closed 3.5 point favourites.
Exactly, and because the money just kept coming for the Bunnies, so I feel like we're on the right side. But I hate to boil the game down too simplistically, because you could have seen this if you just watched the highlights. But Katoni Staggs scored 3 tries, 2 of them where he just threw people off him. But where was any Rabbitohs playmaker? Where was Cody Walker or Latrell Mitchell or Dane Gagai beating somebody? You need outside backs that can create a moment for you. And probably they were just one moment short in the end. They lose the game by 4. And it was because Staggs made plays that none of the Rabbitohs could do.
Yep. No, 100% agree with you. Let's move on to the Raiders beating the Warriors 20 points to 6. We did like the Warriors in this one, and we do go 2-0 on best bets. We push on the other best bet because of a late Raiders try. We had Warriors plus 14, and the late Raiders try made them win by 14. Look, I thought it was a solid performance by the Raiders. I thought they made a lot of mistakes in the first half. I thought they gave a lot of penalties away in the first half that helped the Warriors. And to be fair, I don't think we probably should have gone 2-0 on best bets in this one. The Raiders were by far the better team. Look, I don't know what to think of this Warriors team. I get, there's a lot of turmoil around the team. They're having to stay in Australia. It's a lot of shit going on. A lot of distractions going on for this Warriors team. But I know I talk about the halves a lot, but look, Blake Green and Chanel Harris-Tavita, they do not provide enough in the halves to me. And I think they need to get Tuivasa-Sheck involved more. Why is he not involved more? Maybe you can answer it when I'm done, Jacob, but I think that Roger Tuivasa-Sheck should get the ball in his hands more, and they should get him involved more. And if they don't, he should demand the ball more. He is by far the best player on that Warriors team. He needs to have the ball in his hands a lot more than he did in this game. In terms of the Raiders, very solid defense. I thought they made a few uncharacteristic errors. But we mentioned this at the start of the season, that this Raiders team might start a little bit slow, and I thought the Warriors had chances to be leading at halftime, even possibly win the match if they took advantage of their chances in the first half. What I will say, Ken Mamalo, are you fucking kidding me? The guy looks disinterested. He looks dead set disinterested, not even trying to catch bombs, putting his hands up lackadaisically, not getting on the ball when there's a loose ball on the ground. This Warriors team, it's not the whole team in general, but dead set. Ken Mamalo, wake up. You were one of the better wingers in the comp last year, and you look like you don't even care this year.
Funny you say that. I thought the same about Pompey on the other wing. There was a couple of times the ball went in the air and he just waved a token handed.
Yeah.
It's like, mate, there are so many young, athletic, up-and-coming footy players out there that would love to jump on a wing of an NRL side. Like, once you get picked in first grade, you've got to bring it every week. And look, that's a funny thing about the Raiders. We can't really grade how good they are yet in 2020 because they haven't got out of third gear the last 2 weeks, and they've had the two softest kills of the comp that you could have so far. I will say, though, we won 2 of our bets and pushed the other one, so essentially we go 2-0 in the game. Thanks to the fact the Warriors did play with effort. You know, they were competitive first half. They didn't take any chances, but they were just sturdy enough to only concede one try. Yeah, then you could argue the other way, like Nick Kotrick made a break out of 3-on-1 and slipped. But anyway, when you bring effort, then you keep yourself in the game. But to me, their forward pack is not going to bully anybody. I mean, they look to a guy like Adam Blair, and he can be woeful more often than he's good. He's living on the reputation of having a couple good years in Brisbane and maybe playing good once or twice for the Kiwis, but he's just not good enough, especially if he's your forward pack leader.
Yeah.
And, you know, to answer the RTS conundrum, like, he's been one of my favourite players for years, and I actually think a bit of it's on him. He doesn't look like he has that same pep this season. It's not like you're saying the halves need to get him the ball more, but he's played under the same halves, and he's played behind, you know, crappy teams before, but he still stands out. Marmelo should be a superstar, and you already kind of called him out. He's not making an impact, even for Satua. So I'm not seeing an impact from the one area of the ground where they should have an advantage. So I don't know how they're going to go about trying to win any games this year.
It's a funny one because you mentioned it, and it's like, if you're the fullback, sometimes you need to get yourself involved. Like, Kalen Ponga gets himself involved. He gets in the play, he makes passes and shit. But it's like, RTS seems to not do that, and it's a funny one. Like, he's the best player on the team by far. You need to get him the ball more. In what was a cracker of a game, I know a lot of people complained about this one being a boring game, but the Seagulls beat the Roosters 9-8. I thoroughly enjoyed the game. I thought it was a really high standard. I thought it was a really high defensive standard by both teams. The Roosters go 0-2, and I mean, not to toot our own horn, but we mentioned this at the start of the season, that this Roosters team is so stacked, they know what needs to get done throughout the season, that they might start a little bit slow because they know they're going to be in the top 4 at the end of the year. And that's kind of what happened in this game. I thought that it was really good defensive performance by both teams. It's a Cherry Evans field goal that separates them at the end of the day, but really I thought what separated them was the Tommy Turbo try-saving tackle on Luke Keary. And let's be fair, we all know Tommy Turbo for his attack, but in this game, I thought defensively, he was great. Not only that tackle on Luke Keary, the try-saving tackle that, you know, pretty much saved him the game, but I thought he was outstanding defensively. This Manly team is legit. We said this, we picked them to be a top 4 team this year. But really good standard by both teams. I don't think that I'd downgrade either team for this game. If anything, I'd probably keep them the same or even upgrade both teams slightly for this performance. I thought they were both stellar.
Yeah, in the preview I said, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if that game, Manly versus Sydney Roosters, end up being the grand final because I see them as 2 elite caliber teams. I tell you, the Roosters have to do a bit of work to get there now. But in saying that, it's like they have been pretty close the last 2 weeks. Like, they held a 12-point lead against Penrith, and Penrith's impressive this year. And then you're right there. It's a field goal in it. So for all the people that want to start, you know, shoveling dirt on the Roosters' grave, like, it's a little early. That they know they've got improvement in them, and we've said this from the start. And yes, we've got them top of our power ratings, but we've still got them rated well below what the marketplace has, because we were all over Penrith last week, we were all over Manly this week. So we knew that there was value going against the Roosters, and as we've seen, they've been upset outright. Now, this was the Tommy Trbojevic performance I was hoping for last week when we took Manly at home against the Storm, and I actually called him out saying he was a bit quiet for my liking. You're right. I mean, he just glides around the field like a gazelle, but he's strong. He's like kind of long. He just like is agile. I mean, I was thinking that when he saved that try with Keary, you know, who obviously wasn't rushing to put the ball down, but thought he was in for all money. Like, Darius Boyd could have played for another million years at fullback for Brisbane. He's never going to make that play. It just goes to show, like, combination of Tommy being able to, like, swerve back and just not give up on the play,
Trent
but
Robinson
also pure athleticism. Yeah, but I mean, and Keary is not an inexperienced player. This is a guy that's played for the Kangaroos, but he just thought the angle he took back in field, there was no one near him. But when you watch it, like, Trbojevic, the way that he swerved even after he'd missed the tackle, And he saved another one on Morris, and he's always a threat
Yep.
to the line. And, Teddy wasn't too bad in this game either. It was awesome to see
No,
a couple of star fullbacks just go about their work. They're always threatening with the ball. And you're right, Manly, they expected to win that game. They got a lot of belief in this team. They're one of the sides that doesn't have key injuries, whereas the Roosters, you got to remember, they did have 2019 Latrell Mitchell last year, as you said, who was the best center in the comp. They had Cooper Cronk last year. And they're missing Cordner as well. That's your captain and your best forward. So it shows. And in saying all that, they haven't been too far away. So not giving up on them yet either.
Yeah, 100%. But as much as people complain about that game, I really thought it was a high standard game. Let's move on to the Knights absolutely demolishing the West Tigers 42.
Hold on. What about what about Shark Storm?
What did I miss? Yeah, fuck. Oh, yep. I had them mixed up.
Oh, well, whatever's easier.
No, it's all good. Let's talk about the Storm beating the Sharks 12 points to 10. A diabolical loss by the Sharks. 10 points to 4 up with, 15 minutes left, Jacob? And they give that one away. I thought that it was an ugly game. I really did. I thought a lot of errors by both teams. I thought that the Sharks probably deserved to win that one. But let's be real here. This is what the Storm like, and this is what the Sharks like when they won the comp. They get into those ugly kind of grinded out games. But that's not the kind of Sharks team. Now you've got Sean Johnson. You need him to make plays. And look, he is not clicking early. And when Sean Johnson's not clicking early, it's really tough for you guys to win games, for the Sharkies to win games. He was missing multiple passes out wide, missing the mark multiple times, which is unusual for a guy of that caliber, especially second year at the Sharks. But the Storm, just another grinded out win. And to be fair, it probably should have come down to a drop goal. I thought that penalty was soft, but in terms of the Sharkies, it is pretty dumb to be holding on to the ball that long when Muncie gets tackled, and you know that as soon as he lets go of the ball, they're going to blow the penalty here. But look, yeah, just a messy, kind of ugly game, and look, in terms of the Sharks' mentality going into next week, that is a brutal one. I think that they might be a little bit down from this one, knowing that they let one slip against a Storm that they certainly should have won.
They're a bit like the Dragons. They're a team we didn't think would have a good season to begin with, and it started with 2 brutal losses.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you a question. This is not a flex, but do you have a 4K TV?
No.
Oh, mate, you are missing out. I know pretty much anyone who's bought a TV in the last 2 years, they're all 4K.
I've got like a
if you're wondering what that means.
TV.
And if you've got like a Foxtel box that's like a year or 2 old, you've got the Ultra HD channel, and I thought they should show every NRL game, but they've only shown one the last 2 weeks. It's been the Sharky game both times. I tell you, I just want to shout it out for people who maybe they don't know the game is also on the Ultra HD channel as well as the Fox League. It is so sharp. I was just sitting back and I was just like, that's one of the most beautiful sights I've ever seen. And I was loving the game that bit more just for how sharp it was. Meanwhile, it kept flicking to Bellamy in the box and he was not enjoying the game at all. It's one thing to have errors in your game, but the uncharacteristically poor, terribly timed errors by the Storm that littered all the way through the game. And the Sharks returned the favour plenty of times. So it was scrappy as hell. But when is Sharks Storm not scrappy as hell? The Sharks kind of got the game they wanted where it was there to be won. And in fact, they're the ones that score the go-ahead try and get up 6, as you say, with 15 minutes to go. But it's just classic Storm. They get that late try and they always seem to squeak these ones out with a fortuitous penalty call, really nothing in it for a ref to give a penalty with 3 minutes to go in front of the post, just because the ball pops out when, there's tackles like that 20 times a game. But especially the fact that the Sharks
always going to call it's fucking
you've
dumb.
got to be smart.
You've got to be smart.
I mean, you talk about this Sharks team won the comp in 2016. They were saying only 3 of the players from that team were still on the field. It's crazy how the DNA of this team has changed a bit. And they lost Nakora, who's one of their best back rowers, in the warm-up. So it was actually quite impressive that they held the Storm to 2. And look, I wouldn't criticize Johnson. I know that they got stifled so many times in attack and it wasn't crisp. But again, a great defensive side like the Storm will make you look sloppy in attack.
It's funny, but I know you said you wouldn't criticize Johnson, but when you have passes hitting the ground, not once, not twice, but multiple times in a row, that's not crisp.
Well, yeah, I think they were frustrating. The wingers rushing in, and timing their tackles pretty well as well. So I thought I'll praise the defense of both teams as much as I've criticized their attack.
No, that's fair. That's a fair call. All right, and we already talked about Knights.
Tigers, Knights, we've got to go.
Didn't we just talk about that? We talked about that at the start
Mate,
of the.
have you might need to get tested for
I
corona.
might
We
need
just
to get
talked we
talked about
talked about Eels and Titans at
I
the start. We
might
haven't
need
talked about
to.
Tigers
Yeah,
Knights.
you're right. We didn't talk about Tigers Knights, and it is one that was very interesting. It was the Knights beating the Tigers 42 points to 24. And if you haven't joined our Facebook group, please join it. Tripod Punters Tips Forum, because we had a poor old bloke in there, and thank God he hedged slightly, but he had a multi paying $20,000 off $10 for the Knights to win 1-12, and that late try with about 10 minutes left sunk his bet. But props to him for not cashing out. Did a little mini hedge, so he still made a little bit of profit. But look, we were on the Knights in this one, and look, 3-1, we went on best bets. Jacob, is that right? I thought the Knights were superior. I thought Mitchell Pearce was very, very solid. And like I said, when you get your fullback involved, like Ponga, then good things happen. And I thought Ponga got involved just enough. I thought the Tigers were very lax in defense, especially early on. The first couple of tries were super soft. It's funny, that not tackling in the air. It's a weird one. It's almost like the Tigers didn't want to even contest some of the bombs in this game. I mean, there was like 5 or 6 occasions that they just let the Knights catch the bombs uncontested, and a couple of those led to tries. Super bad under the high ball, the Tigers, I thought. Like Nofaluma, I think it was the second try, was it, for the Knights, didn't even contest that.
The third one where you just let Edric Lee
Edric Lee one,
in.
I think it was the second try for the Knights. He just let him fucking stroll in and catch that one. And look, everyone was blown up about Benji Marshall last week. I think he came back a little bit down to earth this week, and I think that's to be expected. We can't expect him to put up performances like round 1 every week. And like we'd like to say, I think we haven't said it this year at all, Jacob, but you're never as good as your best performance, and you're never as bad as your worst performance. And I think maybe some people judged Benji Marshall from last week and said he's just going to replicate that this week. I thought Josh Reynolds was actually better than Benji Marshall this week. So, deserving win by the Knights, but very, very poor defense, very poor effort by the Tigers this week.
Yeah, you're right about Nofaluma. I mean, this rule change, what it has changed is you used to be able to get away with short, stocky wingers who can have their moment where they can barge over a man one-on-one. And when the ball got kicked in the air, they would just tackle the jumping opponent winger the second that they touched the ball and make life very difficult for them. Now you can't do that. If you can't challenge for the ball yourself in the wing position when you know you're going to be under the high ball, especially if you're a liability, it can be 10 times a game.
Yep.
Then that's going to create massive problems. I didn't think it was as simple a win as you're making out, though, for the Knights. I tell you, I was sweating at one point in this game. Yeah. But this was a bit like the Bunnies game, where we took the Knights as an underdog. We just couldn't understand why the bookies had them as an underdog.
I thought they were better, though.
Sure enough, by game day today, I mean, the Knights were favoured across every bookie. But I was worried as well. SESE injured first tackle of the game. Barnett went off in the first 5 minutes. Shibasaki got injured. Glasby got injured. Even Fitzgibbon was puking his lungs up on the field. So I was a bit worried. Then they shot out to a 10-0 lead and one soft try for Bomb and stuff. And you think, all right, well, they've got the ascendancy here. But a bit like the Panthers, they threw an intercept. Ponga throws an intercept when they've got an overlap at 10-0 up.
That would have been over.
And instead it's 10-6 and she's on again.
Yep.
And then I think they scored another try off a soft bomb. There was some weird soft tries in this game. Like the Knights also got a try where the Tigers didn't line up. They botched their numbers on their own try line, and the Knights just went blindside and Ponga strolled in for a touch footy try. But by the same token, the Knights were running out of troops, and second half they let the Tigers score a couple of tries. At 24-26, with the Knights still holding on to the lead, but they'd just been under siege, I wanted to be on the Tigers. I thought with 20 minutes to go, the Tigers would be the fitter team. Then they got tackled in their own end goal off a kickoff. Then they dropped the ball on their own 10-metre line, and the repeat errors ended up allowing the Knights to score and score again. So I think the Knights got off a bit easy, but it's interesting. Week 1, the Knights hold an opponent to 0. Week 2, the Knights score 42. Now, they need to get their attack and their defence right in the same game to beat somebody good.
Yes.
But it's showing that it's there, so it's positive signs for Newcastle. Whereas the Tigers, they're a kind of team that'll fight every week, but they're not going to blow you off the park, and we kind of saw their limitations today.
Yeah, definitely, and they'll get better once they get Luke Brooks back in terms of attack especially, but he's going to be gone for the next 2 to 3 weeks, and who even knows if we are going to have NRL in 2 to 3 weeks' time. But look, guys, thanks once again for tuning in what could be, hopefully it's not the last Tripod podcast, NRL podcast for this year. So far, what we've heard is that the AFL is suspending games for 2 months, but the NRL so far has not. So, look, doesn't matter what we think about the decision, but as long as there's NRL, Jacob, we're going to be punting on it. So,
100% we'll be here.
Yeah, that's it, guys. So, look, thanks once again for tuning in to the recap. And unless there's something that changes in the next 3 days, we will be back at Wednesday, 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time, 7 p.m. Daylight Savings Time to preview round 3. If anything changes, we will let you know. Thanks once again for tuning in, guys. We'll see you on Wednesday.
Lego.